The earth and the material the earth creates, whether assisted by human production such as paper, or on its own such as bark, continues activities even as discarded or unwanted commodities. It is an actant or a being who acts, and its many forms produce effects, dramatic and subtle. Doing more than existing, the earth transforms, responds, and participates as it shapes ecosystems, breaks down, regenerates, resists, and carries meaning. Concrete subjectivity is a materialist analysis inspired by Maori. This materialism is not to be confused with consumerism, which is sometimes called materialistic. Yet consumerist materialism is hardly materialist at all. Consumerism is in fact unmaterialist, because it not only relies on the notion of out of sight, out of mind, but also out of sight, out of matter. The double meaning I have used here is deliberate. Hyperconsumption not only sees discarded material as something that no longer matters, as in it won't have any effect when it's discarded, but also that a material is no longer even considered matter when it is out of sight. And yet, neither meaning is correct. Consider a landfill. Most people don't realize just how active their discarded material is. Indeed, discarded material is so active that without intervention, a landfill can cause an explosion from all the generated methane. The earth is a constant actor, a being deserving of personhood. By contrast, people treat corporations as material objects, and in most countries, a corporation has the same rights as a natural person to hold property, enter into contracts, and to sue or be sued. And yet, corporations are at best reified abstractions. Where does a company actually exist? Its headquarters may exist in one country, yet its activities exist in another. Think of the extraction of cobalt in the Congo for Silicon Valley in the USA. So where is its material base? At the site of extraction? But then why does capital generate towards Silicon Valley? Is its material base in Silicon Valley? Without the extraction in other countries, these companies wouldn't exist. Many exceptions would have to be made to begin considering a company as a concrete material thing, let alone a person, because in its form it is an abstraction based on extraction. Under consumerist materialism, material is consumed with almost no recognition of the violence of its extraction and distribution. This detachment from true materialism is deeply tied into the capitalist figure of nature as somehow an abstract. Its abstracted form, commodity value, is obsessed over. Land, however, is clearly material, yet settler thought believes it has no rights, not deserving of personhood, and the only right regarding land is property rights over it. The land itself is not afforded rights. But why not? The land is a political actor. It can change entire societies. It feeds people. It even grows infrastructure such as transport materials like rivers. Perhaps one could argue that personhood should be reserved solely for human beings. However, this would require an individualist metaphysical transcendence above nature. In reality, there has never been a time in any human's life that hasn't been intertwined with the earth. One could argue that consciousness or self-awareness determines personhood, but would this exist without the water that is required for the brain to function? Indeed, it would not. Therefore, personhood is a relational act, not an individual possession. Consider how another person perceives the color blue. Now, extend this idea to land. Consider how a potato perceives the sun. One case involves cultural and neurological semiotics. The other, biochemical and ecological semiosis. Yet both of these show that existence is not solitary but dialogical. a continuous mediation of signs across bodies, species, and even kingdoms of life. This knowledge is the basis of Mauri and whakapapa, the life force and interconnectedness of all things, including the earth. In contrast, English attempts the aforementioned transcendence above nature. A good example of this is their use of the word soil and dirt, and the negative connotations they place on it, such as soiled or dirty clothes. By contrast, Māori culture deeply respects the soil, understanding its importance as shown in the whakatauki. Te toto o te tangata he kai, te oranga o te tangata, he whenua, he one one. While food provides the blood in our veins, our health is drawn from the land and soils. The word whenua, meaning land, is also the word for placenta. We are known as tangata whenua, people of the land. Agency in Māori is distributed, not confined to autonomous individuals, but emergent from the network of relations. To be a being is to have agency, presence, and the ability to affect and be affected. And the earth does all of this constantly. Realizing agency is crucial here, because to truly participate in another's being, you must recognize them as a being who acts, not a passive object. A karanga can recognize that a river, a mountain, or a rock may be an ancestor. This is why within karanga, you often can witness wailing or weeping, even if it's karanga in relation to land. It is a deep respect for agency, and thus true sympathy, for everything with Māori. You might ask, why can't there be true sympathy without respect for agency? It's because agency is the active life force of all beings. If you sympathize with a river, but treat it as a dead resource, you are not in real sympathy with it. You are projecting human sentiment onto something you refuse to acknowledge as alive with agency. Environmentalism without respect for the agency of the land is little more than hollow pity at best, or self-interest at worst. Similarly, pitying a human without acknowledging their own Māori is a denial of their being as relation. Therefore, true sympathy means recognizing and honoring the active relational agency of all beings. True sympathy requires respecting agency, because agency is the very relational life force that constitutes being. To sympathize without acknowledging agency is to deny the kinship network of living relations, reducing the other to a passive object rather than a co-actor in the shared web of existence. Without this, you reduce them to a what, erasing their who. This is why pity without respect feels dehumanizing, as it collapses the person into an object of concern rather than a fellow being. Māori, then, is the attunement to another person's being as a self-possessing, world-disclosing agent. Objectification of another, and indeed of land, leads to the objectification of the self. Consider a household in the 1800s. There was only one person, the man, in the household who was allowed agency, to vote, to spend, to bear arms. This relation creates the objectification of the woman of the household, as she had not been afforded the agency the man had. However, this relation is dialectical. Those who are denied agency begin to perceive the empowered individual not as a fellow subject, but as an instrument, an extension of the power they themselves are refused. Especially in times of necessity, the person with agency becomes a mere appendage of the material need. Not a being who acts, the agent becomes objectified as a means to access what the disempowered are denied: money, protection, and voice. Here lies the self-perpetuating nature of patriarchy. Men of the era often complained of feeling unappreciated as breadwinners, without recognizing that it was their own monopolization of agency that transformed them into mere appendages of bread. To treat others as objects is to invite one's own reduction into an object. It creates an object-object relation, or a dependent-instrument relation, instead of a person-person relation. In this way, both sides become trapped in objectified roles. To deny agency to others is ultimately to become an object oneself, not a being who acts, but a functionary of others' unmet needs. This extends to land and its materials too. Under capitalism, the earth is reduced to lifeless matter. Its ghost or exchange value is propped up and incessantly pursued, while its body is exploited. This has consequences for workers. As there is a household agency dialectic, so too is there a land dialectic. If the land is reduced to an object, then those with more agency, such as workers, would be seen as objects, as instruments to extract from the land. Just as the household agency holder becomes an appendage to the object, the worker becomes a mere appendage to the object of the means of production. The earth as a political actor, deserving its own agency, is not outside the means of production like factories, but is in fact that very means of production. She is working alongside you, the synthesis of the dialectical relation between worker and production. After all, a factory or tool doesn't cease to be nature. The wood handle of a hammer doesn't cease to be material from the tree. Papatuanuku is formed into tools and factories, and just like a worker under capitalism is made to work under exploitative conditions, she then becomes proletariat, just like you. A better way to understand the worker's relation to the means of production, then, is as stewardship rather than control. Think of it like those old union posters, but instead of just two workers shaking hands, a worker shakes hands with the branch of a rako. To paraphrase Kropotkin, if everything we enjoy in life is the product of collective labour and therefore belongs to all, then we must also recognize that everything we enjoy is drawn from the earth and thus belongs to the earth as well. Or perhaps we should take his statement in Conquest of Bread with a post-human ontological perspective. The cities, bound together by railroads and waterways, are organisms which have lived through centuries. Dig beneath them and you find, one above another, the foundations of streets, of houses, of theatres, of public buildings. Search into their history and you will see how the civilization of the town, its industry, its special characteristics, have slowly grown and ripened through the cooperation of generations of its inhabitants before it could become what it is today. If the language used is to be taken literally here, Kropotkin's analysis would align with the concepts of whakapapa and Maori. Kropotkin was, in fact, inspired by Maori through his close friend Elise Reclus, who wrote about us at length in The Earth and Its Inhabitants, Oceania. We must realize that control of the means of production, in effect, creates a relation of servitude to the worker or capitalist, enabling the very same capitalist relations we seek to abolish. Seeing workers as controlling rather than stewarding the means of production keeps us in a capitalist ontology of domination. If the world is seen simply as a machine, then it leads the worker to be seen as simply a cog. To assist true liberation, we need to understand the who-ness in not only each other, but in every material thing in nature we interact with.